Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Good evening, everybody. So a different speaker this evening. Lumpur Kalyano has taken a well-deserved 2-week personal retreat. He's been, well-deserved. He's been doing a lot of online teaching, administration, supporting the Sangha. So, he's having a well-earned 2 weeks for his own personal practice. So he's asked me to say a few words this evening to just keep these Saturday night online Dharma talks going, because we're still in lockdown. I was comparing some of the terminology of this time with the terminology used by the Buddha. So we talk about the roadmap out of lockdown, the coronavirus. Of course, in Buddhism we talk about the roadmap of the Eightfold Path. That is the path out of suffering. We talk about the 4 stages of coming out of lockdown. And, in the Buddha's teaching, we have like the stages of purity. And interesting, that we talk about that in 4 stages. There's the realization of being Sotapanna, Sakadagami, Anagami, and Arahant, the stages of purity. And the purpose is to eventually come out of lockdown. And the Buddha's teaching is I would say, coming out of being locked down in the sense of I and mine, me and mine. Not being locked down in self-centeredness. And, when the sense of self is seen through with wisdom, then, there's no suffering created around it. So the teachings of the Buddha is about, you could say, dismantling and cultivating those sort of qualities that lessen this sense of self-centeredness, self-obsession, the sense of I am mine. And in some ways going against the grain of a society that promotes individualism, promotes becoming somebody, being something special, being successful on a worldly level. There is a line in the Mangala Sutta, a verse in the Mangala Sutta, that talks about 4 qualities that bring blessings. And in the Pali it's Gara Wocha Niwato Cha Santuti Chakitanyuta. And the translation of this is respectfulness, humility, contentment and gratitude. If we cultivate these qualities, this brings great blessing. What I find in this verse is, these qualities are things that we cultivate to lessen that sense of I and me. Now, what I, my own, sort of seeing in our sort of more Western modern day societies is how these qualities are becoming less prominent. Respectfulness for parents, teachers, elders, humility, contentment, and gratitude. These sort of my personal observation is that they're on the decline. What's more on the growth is more the sense of I am and me and mine. So these are, I see these things as important qualities to reflect on. And I thought I'd reflect a little bit on these first two qualities of respect and humility this evening, because these are qualities that the Buddha very much encouraged us to cultivate these attitudes. So after the Buddha's enlightenment, soon after his enlightenment, the Buddha, what thought came to mind, is there like another Buddha in the world that I can go and pay respects to? Because he said that one lives unhappily who doesn't have something to respect. You say to hold above one's sense of me. But, at the time when the Buddha surveyed the world with his divine eye, he saw there wasn't any more Buddhas senior to him. So the Buddha said, instead I shall live respecting, revering the Dharma that I've realized. So here the Buddha, emphasizing the importance of a respectful attitude. And very much in our life in the Sangha, this is a very important part of the way. In Sangha we live together. So we have many like gestures of respect, bowing, making Anjali, and tonight, in puja, bowing, paying respects to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So in Sangha, we make gestures of respect towards our elders. And the sense of, if somebody is like senior to us too, you say, put them in before us. So if we were getting in say a minibus to go on a journey, we'd let the seniors get in the bus first, choose their seats first before the juniors get in the bus. There was an incident in the time of the Buddha where Venerable Sariputta was coming to see the Buddha with a group of monks, and there were some of the monks went on ahead, and they weren't very well trained monks, and they went ahead and got all the best places for themselves, all the best lodgings. And so Venerable Sariputta arrived, and there was nothing available for him. And this is the senior most, one of the most wise members of the Sangha. And he ended up just spending the night at the root of a tree. And in the morning, the Buddha came across Sariputta, just sitting at the root of a tree, and asked him, what are you doing at the root of a tree? And of course, Venerable Sariputta said, well, all the lodgings were taken, so this is where I spent the night. So this led the Buddha to give a rebuke to the monks about, being respectful to elders. And even saying that, who do you respect? He asked the monks, who do you respect? And some said, well, I respect arahants. And some said, I respect anagamis. I respect people who have this attainment and that attainment. But, the Buddha emphasized more respecting those that are elder in the order, not just those with attainments. So a junior enlightened being would bow to a senior non-enlightened being. Well-trained monks would bow to maybe not so well-trained monks who are senior, because and that's also it's lessening our own pride, isn't it? That's saying, I'm not going to bow to that monk because he's not an arahant. That's sort of our own pride, isn't it? I'm going to respect this monk and that monk. Like the example was like with Lumpur Cha, his upachaya, a person who gave him the upasampada or ordained him, was a village monk. He didn't have a very refined character from the reports, but every Rasa, Lumpur Cha would go and take gifts and bow to him very gracefully, because he was senior, he was upachaya. So this is like sort of humility, isn't it? Maybe also we can, just be humble in terms of, paying respects to elders. On this occasion with the Venerable Sariputta, the Buddha gave a nice little story, and a Jataka story, and it's about a partridge and a monkey, an elephant, who lived together. And they were living together very well, always arguing, not relating to each other very nicely. And they came to the conclusion that living together like this wasn't pleasant. So they decided to find out who was the oldest amongst them, so they could respect the elder of the three. And the way they found out was by each one relating their experience towards a banyan tree that was growing where they lived, in terms of what was your first memory of the banyan tree. And the elephant said, well, I remember when I was a young elephant, the top of it used to rub against my belly. And the monkey said, well, when I was young, I used to be able to nibble the shoots on the bottom branch. And the partridge says, well, I ate the fruit and defecated the seed that banyan tree came from. So of course they realized then the partridge was the senior. So they began to, have a more respectful attitude towards the partridge. And the partridge then thought, well, now I've got to set an example for my two friends. So, and give encouragement. So he encouraged them all in terms of keeping the 5 precepts. And of course, keeping them himself as an example, because one example is important. So this is a story that where the Buddha again stressed the importance of respectfulness in terms of living together in a way that's pleasant. If people live together disrespectfully, then it's not pleasant. One aspect to being respectful is, the being able to listen. So again, some people might have the attitude, I can only learn from arahants, I can only learn from enlightened beings. Other people, they can't teach me anything. So we can have this sort of attitude, can't we? Just only want to listen to certain teachers who have some reputation of being enlightened or some sort of attainment. Only enlightened beings can teach me. So again, respectfulness is about being willing to listen. So then this is something, in this time when, people have been locked down together a lot, and, in relationships, do we listen to each other? Are we willing to not put up mental barriers when people speak to us? Because, it can happen in, relationships both in the monastery and outside the monastery that at first there's a respectful attitude, but then it declines. So I've seen this in monastic life, people come to the monastery, may be inspired by the teacher. They've heard Dharma talks and feel quite inspired. So then they come and live with the teacher. And maybe the teacher has some habits that they find irritating. They get used to listening to the same old things, and then they start getting a bit more critical. And then, shutting off when the teacher's teaching. After the Dharma talk, there's the giving anumodana. And there's been times when monks wouldn't join in the anumodana because of disrespect of what was taught. So one of the qualities that, lead to growth of a community or lead growth to a household is being able to respect and listen to elders. And, it's not that we have to agree with everything that our elders say, but be willing to be open and listen to in a respectful way. Like in the time of the Buddha, like now, there was some, parents of monks who didn't want their sons or daughters to become monks and nuns. And this, this happens in the West. There's actually probably very few parents who want their sons and daughters to become monks and nuns in the West. But be able to discuss it in a friendly and an open way helps with, the situation. Of course, when people don't listen to each other, when people sense that they're not being heard or valued, then that's the breaking down of relationship, isn't it? When we say, oh, shut up, don't bother me. But of course, in terms of, as we do have things we have to discuss, of course it's important we try to do that in a skillful way, so that it makes us more easy to listen to. When I was the abbot of Chithurst Monastery, there was times when there was complaints about certain things happening in the monastery from the lay community. So I had to, meet with them. So I listened to them in a friendly way, without getting defensive, and then just give our perspective. And even though, we couldn't comply with their wishes or do anything about what they were complaining about, just the fact that we wanted to listen to them and valued their opinions helped to sort of pacify the situation. Where maybe if they felt you were listening to them, brushing them off in some not nice way, maybe it would make the situation worse. They would decide to make more problems. So there's a lot to be said by just the ability to listen. And again, this is a gesture of respect between people when they can listen to each other. Now, sometimes in the media we don't see good examples of this, in politics. But it doesn't mean we have to be like that ourselves, On the soaps and the politics of people just interrupting and shouting at each other. And respect can also be shown by acts of service. Doing things to help and support our elders. In our monastic tradition, we have what we call a charyawata, which is like looking after the elders. So the elders in the monastery have what we call an attendant, who helps them out, does things for them, supports them. And this, to create a sense of mutual respect and support. And creates, a nice relationship in that way. So acts of, service to elders and teachers. Before I was a monk, I once spent about 6 weeks in a meditation center in Chiang Mai, in the north of Thailand. And the teacher there, he couldn't speak English. And there was this lady who would translate for me when I went to have interviews with the teacher. And she was like a lecturer at Chiang Mai University. I was quite, impressed that, her students would come and bring extra food. Because actually, the sort of basic food in the monastery wasn't really all that wonderful. So students would bring extra little goodies to supplement the food that was offered at the monastery, the basic big bowl of rice and curries. So the sense of respect for the teacher, serving something for the teacher. One thing in this time of the coronavirus, people have done much more for the elderly. Many things that people delivering food for the elderly because they're more vulnerable. My father, when he was alive, he lived alone, and there's a Muslim family across the road. And whenever they had a party, they would always bring some food over for my father. Oh, that was a very nice gesture. So acts of service and generosity is a very nice way to show respect for elders. Of course, it's also, if one is respectful, one tends to be more polite towards the people we meet. And gestures of politeness, letting somebody in a traffic jam go in front of you, letting somebody, elderly person in the queue to go in front. Again, this is something I see a little bit more, not so manifest these days, after regularly I used to go up to Manchester to visit my elderly father when he was alive. Now I still go up to visit some family, and I have the experience of going on public transport, especially now I've got my age bus pass. And just, people sort of push and shove to get on the bus. Everybody's want to get the seat for themselves, which is an understandable inclination. But a sense of, letting people who've been queuing up longer go first and letting the elderly go first, you don't really get the sense that that's happening. I remember one time actually that I was with my father, and this is in his 80s, and he had a walking stick, and I was waiting for the tram, and the tram stopped with the doors right in front of where me and my father were standing, and the doors opened, and the tram was fairly crowded. And this young guy just pushes straight on in front of my father and sits in the old person's seat. So it's sort of sad to see, isn't it? A sense of politeness and also consideration for others. When we get so blinkered in what I want, we lose that sense of politeness and consideration for others. So I bring this perception of the bodhisattva practice to mind. When the bus comes in, I'll wait there until everybody gets on, then I'll get on the train. I won't enter Nibbana till all sentient beings have gone first. It's a nice little perception, and let people get on. Occasionally people invite me to get on. But one can understand the inclination to want to get a good seat for oneself, but one doesn't have to follow that and be considerate for others. And I see that on the buses too. And when I was a boy, you always used to stand up if an elderly person or even a lady got on the bus. You'd stand up and let them have your seat. But I don't see that happening so much these days either. And, self-centeredness doesn't, when we're just concerned about me and what I want, it doesn't lead to happiness. And maybe this is part of why there's so much like depression and mental illness now, because people are just so into themselves, not opening out to respect, consider others. In England, they say that now 1 in 5 people have some form of mental illness, on some sort of medication for mental illness. So it's it is a beautiful attitude when one can be polite and considerate towards others, to look out for others. And this is also how we try to live together in Sangha. If we see somebody overburdened with things or needs help with something, looking out for each other. Rather than just thinking about what, me and what I want for me. Again, this is with this looking after elders. It's not just something that we do maybe in chores time or something, but something that is an ongoing quality of awareness of if somebody needs help with something or support with something. Of course, this sort of attitude brings a more quality of harmony in a group. When people live together with respect and politeness and consideration for each other. Rather than just having what one wants on top of one's agenda. But speaking of respect, as a monk in Thailand, and maybe especially also being a Western monk, you get a lot of respect. Ajahn Karuniko was telling me the other day, in the early days when the first Western monks came in the northeast of Thailand, the people thought they must be arahants, giving up all that material wealth to become monks, living austere life in the forest, eating sticky rice and all sorts of strange food, hot climate, insects. It's changed a bit now because a few Western monks have lost the plot over the years, but still a great respect for the monks in Thailand. You go to if you go on the public transport there as a monk, somebody will stand up for you to sit down. Even have special seats for the monks at the airports. Usually on the more priority seats, you see pictures of pregnant women and old people with walking sticks on the back of the seat. In Thailand, you see the pregnant woman, the old person with a walking stick, and an outline of a monk on the priority seats in the departure lounge. People can't do enough for you in terms of taking you places, looking after you, feeding you. And that, is quite a beautiful thing to witness. And the fact that people respect the monks means that, they respect good qualities, so that's going to be for their welfare and benefit. But then, coming to the West is a different situation. So in the West, one has to more focus on humility. Because, especially, in the north of England where I'm from, where I visit, it's, more working class. People are not so well-travelled. They don't probably get beyond Europe in their travels. And quite, maybe in some ways, quite an insular society in the north of England. So I get, more reactions because, I look quite different from other people when I'm, travelling and walking around the streets in the north of England. And, sometimes I get some quite unfriendly remarks. And I get rude comments sometimes because some people really, in a sort of more insular sort of environment that they live in, they don't like anything different, especially maybe a man walking around in a skirt, So you can get some quite rude comments. You'd also get some friendliness as well. So once I'm just near my parents' house, walking up the road, and these young guys stop in a car, and they say to me, "What planet are you from?" So you get these sort of comments. So how to just accept what they're saying and just respond with more equanimity as one can, and friendliness. Of course, people don't let you on the bus first. People don't stand up for you. So it's a good opportunity to see if you're not getting carried away with all the respect one got when one was in Asia, or in Thailand. But I'd like to just relate one little encounter that I had. I used to visit my parents at Christmas. And, I go up from the Chitters in the south up to the north of England, up to Manchester. And they lived in one of the suburbs of Manchester. And I go by train. And this particular Christmas, there were some problems with the trains. And usually I plan my journey to get to my destination quite early in the evening, by 6 o'clock. But on this particular journey, I ended up on Manchester Station. It's like 8 o'clock at night. And having to wait for delayed trains. So I was sat in the waiting room, and being Christmas, everybody's in sort of party spirits and drinking. And while I was initially I was just in the waiting room by myself, but then this group of young ladies came in, full of the Christmas spirit, and they were sort of behind me, because I was at the front on the front seat in the waiting room, and they started singing all these sort of songs, which had some quite rude words to them. Anyway, that's what young people do. I used to do it myself, so I can understand, the frivolity. And so they were singing these songs. And then also there's this hush and a little whispering. And I think they suddenly noticed this strange looking person sat in the room. So a couple of them came up to me and said, what are you? So I told them I was a Buddhist monk. And they said, aren't you cold? This is winter in England, and I only had my dress like this. Especially because the trains are so hot, I don't really put a lot on, or else it's really hot sitting on the trains. So I said, yes, I am feeling a bit cold. And anyway, then they went back to their friends, and they got into their sing-songs again. Then the train came in, and I stood up to go for the train, but I noticed that they were all so absorbed in their singing that they didn't notice the train had come in. So I politely said to them, "Oi, the train's come in." And then there was this mad rush of the girls going for the waiting room door. So I stood back, did my bodhisattva practice, let the girls out. Then I came out onto the platform. Then the train doors opened, and quite an interesting thing happened, that instead of all the girls rushing on the train, they stopped and they invited me on the train first. So I thought, that's quite nice. Though they reciprocated one's friendliness and politeness. So when we are mocked or talked to in not nice ways, it's be able to take that. Once I was on the bus and these girls asked me, "What are you?" And I said, "I'm a monk." And then it says, "Oh, monkey, monkey, monkey." But it's the way young people are. But be able to, also, say things in polite ways. And, if we have to give feedback to somebody, and not belittling or making them feel bad, but just be more encouraging. Not demeaning, belittling. So this is the why the Buddha encouraged this quality of respectfulness, humility, as a way to lessen this sense of I am, me and mind, as the way of practice to go beyond the attachment to the me and mine, lessening this sense of self that really, if we spend a whole life building it up, eventually just lead to suffering. But like the Buddha said, really the greatest happiness is when we let go of the conceit, I am, to go beyond the sense of me and mine. So I'd like to offer these thoughts this evening.